yeah, they're getting hooked up with an academic center there. So I get started in the process of getting accredited.
It's temporary, or you need to not be 2 years? Or
No, we're gonna be there. Yeah.
yeah, pay for their duties.
Yeah. So one day I joined my fiance, so we live there here.
That's the position.
No, computer science.
What?
Computer science.
Okay. That's amazing.
I'll be sitting over here, but I have a slide full.
Oh.
I will take the dog. Hear me.
All right.
It is 11. Take your seats. I was gonna take this one.
Are you gonna sit down?
I'm gonna start here and then I'm gonna sit.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we're gonna get cozy. It's firewood.
All right.
This is a cozy chat. We're all friends.
Years in and
So reached out to help me join our talking team to get my master's. And so while I was doing my master's, I'm like, oh, I just asked for your. And I asked, like, what job? I'm like, okay, sure. So I got hired.
Checkity check. Are we a go? I'm looking for somebody to give me thumbs up. Perfect. Hey, thank you, everybody. We're going to start now, if you can hear me. So thank you for everybody being here, both in person and anybody who's joining us online. I'm Audrey Verde. I'm going to be moderating this session. This session is called Under Pressure, Industry Imaging Strategies to Rise Above the Chaos. It's an Ask Industry panel. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a conversation of questions about important things going on in our field. Essentially, this session was initiated by, the theme that you all are feeling. Radiologists are overwhelmed with work. We're getting burned out. We're looking for ways to optimize efficiency. We're looking how AI can help, and we're looking to our vendor partners to how we can work together to solve this problem together. And so that's what we're going to hopefully have a conversation about today. We're going to chat it out for about 45 minutes and then open up to the audience at 15 minutes left. So you all can help me. I have others helping me, but when it's 15 minutes left, you can just start walking up to the mic to ask questions, to give me a signal. We need to cut it off up here because I want to hear from you too and what's important to you, okay? All right. If you want CME or CE for this, you have to first add it to your schedule in the app, just a heads up, so go ahead and do that. All right. And we have several great speakers with us today. I'm going to let them go down the line and introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump right into questions, okay? Here we go.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Steve Deaton. I'm the Director of Cloud Services at Visage Imaging, and I've been in the healthcare industry for a few decades now. Early on was very product and engineering focused, and today I get to actually be closer to the physicians and actually the delivery for what makes an impact in their life and their work-life balance. And so that's my day-to-day is interacting with some of the nation's best and brightest physician groups and learning what is important to them. And I'm happy to discuss that today with everybody here.
Hi, my name is Nijim. I too measure by decades now. I've had half my career on the commercial side. The mics aren't working. Do you have your headphones in?
Oh, you need headphones.
On the radio. Okay. Sorry. I started my career on the commercial side, and then I spent about 10 years on the provider side as a CIO of fairly large healthcare organizations. And now I'm the CEO of AdvaHealth, who's a cloud native PACS and enterprise imaging company. So I've lived both sides of the conversation and spent a lot of time talking to radiologists. I'm happy to be here and share what I've learned so far over the years.
yeah, good morning, everyone. Lyle McMillan. I'm an AVP in the product management organization at Highlands Software. And Highlands got a unique position in the imaging world. We're the only vendor out in the market managing all unstructured content for our provider organizations. And so that's everything from medical images to clinical and administrative documents. And so we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that content works for our customers. And that ranges everything from making radiologists more efficient to enabling research and so on and so forth. I've been in the industry since 2007, so approaching my second decade, and have loved every minute of it. So I'm excited to be here today.
I'm Kyle Salini, Strategic Marketing and Business Development Director at AdvaHealth. My primary focus is on enterprise imaging and also work with our clinical advisory board on AI steering committees inside large health systems. Primarily focused on increasing radiology workflows, but also working with cardiology, pathology, and other imaging creation departments. So we work to make sure that we can create that holistic view of the patient for the clinicians as well as downstream departmental workflows.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you all are excited. We have a broad range of expertise here. So we're going to get the party started. So if you all could fix one bottleneck in the radiology workflow, what would it be and how? You first.
Yeah, sure. I came prepared for some of these questions, and getting to participate at SIIM and go to some of the actual presentations kind of pivoted my thoughts. So yesterday I attended a few of the meetings where folks from Mayo, folks from University of Iowa were presenting, and one common thread in their focus and their messaging was to really define the goal that you're trying to reach. So you bring up a problem, and everybody's aware of the blood, sweat, and tears that is, the mess of radiology right now, overworked. And, a lot of people are talking about how to squeeze more studies into the physician's current crushed lifestyle, frankly. And last year when I was on this panel, Dr. Zaragoza from UCLA was sitting next to me, and he said, when a system works really well, it's like a warm bath. And, that goal, I kind of digested that over the last year of what are we trying to actually do? And I think we have to define what we want to do. And I think that it's mostly about improving the radiologist work-life balance. That's the goal that we need to reach, because it's not about can they do more RVUs or work more efficiently. It's can we give them the bandwidth that they're able to actually focus on the patient care more than just the number of studies that they have to read per hour or per day, right? When we see a physician have the ability to have a little bit more free time, they spend more time on cases that need it, and they are able to think more openly about the different diagnoses that are available to them versus just click, click, click. So I think identifying the goal of what's really achievable to improve the radiologist's work life is where we need to focus on. And then, behind that, there's probably dozens of things that can contribute to that. But identifying the goal, I think, is most important.
Nice.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges of being efficient is that you'll get more work. So it's not like you'll get less work. So if you get more efficient,
like
you're
you
going to
could
get
read
more
more.
work, right? So you're absolutely right in that, really the goal isn't just to do more with less. It's really to do more with ease. And I think when we talk about bottlenecks is to, the way I think about it is to streamline the process so that you're kind of in the zone longer instead of being interrupted or being distracted or kind of jumping in and out of, gear switching or what have you. One concrete example I can give is accessing information that we often talk about radiologists as orchestrators of data and just kind of they're getting data added, thrown at in from all kinds of directions beyond just image. And right now, it's not always streamlined. It's sometimes a PDF, sometimes it's an EMR, sometimes it's, and I think we have an opportunity now with, especially with AI, that is great for consuming large amount of data and distilling it for the one thing that you want at that moment. You're looking at an image and you want to know, is this patient on this drug, or is this patient had recently surgery or something like that? That would be a one problem that we can solve that would smooth out. We just need to keep finding more and more of these problems.
Got it. So I'm hearing we have a bottleneck of radiologists, not enough time. And one way we can help that is to streamline access to information. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah, so I had the same debate that my fellow panelists had on this topic because, we and a lot of us in this industry are focused on things like intelligent workflow orchestration for the radiologist, intelligent work list. We're focused on, there's a whole host of reporting vendors here that have generative AI driven reporting solutions now that are designed to reduce the mundane work that they have to go through. I think we're heading down the right path of using the advanced technologies that we have to solve the problems that the radiologists are facing. But I do like that we've surfaced the fact that just making them more efficient will solve the problem we have where the studies, the imaging volumes are increasing, the number of radiologists are not keeping up. That problem gets solved, but putting more burden on the radiologist doesn't seem like the ultimate right solution. And so we do need to continue to focus on that balancing act of how do we reduce the mundane, the switching between work lists, the switching context constantly, a lot of manual steps, try to eliminate the things that make that job less attractive to people. And at the same time, if we can increase volumes and do so with that better work-life balance for that radiologist, I think we can win-win. The tools are there to do it, but I'm not sure anyone's cracked that code yet.
Yeah, I like the idea of unleashing some of the burden on physicians, right? Like at the end of the day, they didn't go to school to figure out how to work a work list.
Word.
So we're trying to make sure that we're able to connect all of the beginning to end aspects of what it is to be a radiologist. And in that regard, working with IT and informaticists to say, well, what systems do you have in place? How are we going to bring in data in an intelligent way, utilize that data? If you're looking at AI, what AI strategies do you have to utilize AI results and AI information before and downstream? If that AI result can tag studies for peer review, then why not use that keyword or flag to create and reduce those mundane tasks that a radiologist did not go to school for?
I love this. All right, so we have a bottleneck of radiologists. That's the issue. We don't have enough for all the work we're doing, but we need to reduce interruptions. We need to increase the visualization of the data we need to do our job, and we need to decrease the mundane. I love this. Okay, so in the world of AI is getting deployed everywhere. How do you all see AI helping with these stressors in the market?
Yeah, I think workflow focused tools are the most important. So like you mentioned, work list. I think someone mentioned kind of aggregating the data elements into one spot for the radiologist before he or she has to open that case and see that something's missing. I think pixel-based AI is obviously very up and coming, although it's been around in mammography in the form of CAD for well over a decade and obviously has a good purpose. But right now, I think the most traction from AI will be had with kind of facilitating everything ahead of the radiologist opening up that study. And even other areas of AI, there's some novel approaches to actually have AI running in the background on every data set to identify other pathologies that the patient might not even be there for. So AI doesn't just have to focus on improving the efficiency of a radiologist. I think that there's other upstream applications of AI to identify things in the background and promote other service delivery areas. If you can identify cardiac events because somebody was incidentally in there for another CT from a car crash or something, using those times to accelerate the patient's benefit is something that I think we all need to make sure we're keeping first on top of mind, because while we want AI to help the physician, ultimately we want to help the patients the most, right?
Yeah, I like that AI in the background comment. I mean, I think if we give physician another tool to play with, it's not going to make them faster. It's going to have them do more work. So AI in the background is a great one. I would also be very careful in thinking there's a silver bullet within AI. I mean, it's a very complicated topic, and not only is it going to be used for helping with efficiency and productivity, but it will also be a tool for creating more demand. And there are AI models now that are being deployed inside the modality, and MAR specifically, that would have in a single shift produce 20% more images. Well, that's 20% more images to be looked at by a radiologist. So AI, it works on both sides of the supply and demand part of this equation. So it is very exciting to think about because it is continuously evolving. We've all heard the phrase, today's AI is probably the worst AI you've ever seen. It's just increasing so much and so fast. So it is a great opportunity, and it's an exciting time to be thinking about.
Yeah. So thinking through this question last night and this morning, I really started saying that AI has penetrated every aspect of the workflow in radiology. And I don't think this is a new topic for anyone in attendance. Everything from acquisition to reporting to the intelligent work list we talked about, to incidental findings, to scheduling. AI pretty much is from start to finish. So I think the potential to make gains all throughout that workflow are there, and there's nothing I'm going to say on the stage that's going to be a shock to anybody that's in attendance here. One area though that I've been fascinated with lately is though using AI to help build out the proper infrastructure for enabling all those workflows in the future. Ahmad here talked about making sure information was available at the right time at the right place. There's a lot of novel use cases for AI on data normalization, consistency at ingest, making migrations more beneficial. And I think to me, that's maybe an area that's not getting enough attention that we can put, that we can add another checkbox to the area of our business that AI has finally penetrated. That I think something we should keep an eye on, and it has the potential downstream to make that workflow from the radiologist better, make the results we provide back to our patients more effective. So that's something that I'm keeping an eye on, definitely.
Yeah. If I may, let's just speak to that a little bit. One thing that we would like to keep testing our hypothesis around, and this is where I love radiologists that are engaged with technology and some of the academic medical centers that do a ton of research on productivity and efficiency. Like the Scribe AI is been getting a lot of attention, but it's pretty much the same workflow we've had before with either the mid-tier provider or an offshore reader or a resident protocol. Like the concept of having a draft ready is not new. So, but everybody's super excited about a Scribe AI. Like, how is that affecting the physician? It's not new to them. It's new to the technology stack. So back to the comment you made earlier, what problem are we really solving? So I appreciate what you said, because I think you got to look at it kind of across the board.
Yeah, I mean, in AI, the more data you have, the more noise you have. And right now there's a whole lot of noise in the market around AI because it's touching every facet of life. It's touching every facet of the healthcare system, the healthcare workflow with inside departments, whether that be radiology, pathology, et cetera. The thing that I think we need to really focus on is how are you going to strategically look at where you're moving data to AI models, how you're ingesting the AI results, whether that just be a data dump and then you're going to have an LLM run against that data. Like, there's a lot of information, and I feel sorry for a lot of organizations because they're being asked to just throw AI at every problem. And you really need to step back and take a strategic approach to say, what are we going to prioritize first? Where are we going to see the most return on our investment? Not from a CPT reimbursement perspective, but from an efficiency gains perspective, or from continued reduction in workflow, right? Like it was stated before, we could probably use AI to create less of a backlog to get procedures performed. And this is a major problem in a lot of countries outside of the US. I think the UK, at UKIO, there was a paper released recently that there's 40,000 patients on backlog to get imaging studies. This is a problem, but when we're looking at all of the problems to solve, we can't just whack-a-mole with AI. We've really got to start to think through, what are you going to do at the data ingestion layer to route to the right studies? You may only have a couple of pipes coming out of your modalities to different models. So how are you going to manage that? It is not a small topic to talk about. It really does take a governance team to step back and make sure that when we're receiving these requests, we're taking them at a very strategic approach. And in any layer of information creation, like it was said, if you get a scribe or human to create information, you still need to figure out how you're going to ingest that and utilize it effectively. When we get a AI result from a VLM on a pre-drafted report, well, are you going to use that information just to build a report? Or are you going to use it to orchestrate and distribute that study based upon, if it's a screening mammography and it's a normal finding, do you want to pre-fetch all 5 prior studies, or do you maybe reduce your network bandwidth and only prefetch a couple studies? So I think that it really does take a time to step back, think about what prioritization problems you're trying to solve beyond just, oh, yes, we'll add that. Yes, we'll add that. Yes, we'll add that. And then you've created Frankenstein's monster that you can't manage.
Yeah, so getting AI, while it has the potential to help, it's really important in how you do it. You brought in essentially data, putting data in on are putting in AI when the foundational data is like essentially garbage isn't going to help. Garbage in, garbage out. So what do you all do as vendors to partner with your users to get to a state of standardized data, to then also have a state set up where they're going to be able to monitor the AI and whether or not there is any gains, right? What are the measurements like that there's a return on investment? Just interested to hear what you all think about that.
Yeah, I think that's another bit of noise that gets added into the soup, right? So you've got radiologists that are working in legacy systems often, and you've got the IT team that is a bunch of mechanics trying to keep the wheels turning on the legacy system. And then you're now bringing in, let's talk about new AI technologies and new workflow. I think it's important to kind of clean your house first and enable your data for the AI, move to the cloud, get it into areas that it's more accessible from other applications and other stacks. And that's one thing that the cloud is actually lubricates adoption of AI. And a lot of folks are just looking for the application tier, and they're not focusing on the IT underlying layer. And that's one thing I think that everybody needs to kind of prioritize a little bit higher in the path there.
I think there's a couple of things that we can talk about. One is, we talk about efficiency and productivity often interchangeably, but I think of efficiency as my personal efficiency. I'm an efficient, radiologist. Versus productivity is my group productive? Is my shift productive? Is my subspecialty cohort productive? And there's different ways to manage that. There's different ways to measure efficiency from a click to sign perspective, and what are the expectations, and how do you compensate, reward, incent behavior that doesn't sacrifice quality. And this is where technology has to intersect with operation, has to intersect with the clinical leadership, and really have a healthy debate about what is it that we're trying to do. And honestly, I like what you said about the cloud being a lubricant for AI, because it is, there is if you leap ahead, you may end up doing more damage than good, right? Because you end up spinning your wheels on infrastructure. But cloud adoption is step one to having all that streamlined.
Yeah, so the whole topic of AI deployment, we really got two topics here. So I'll focus just on the AI side of this. We're currently engaged, Highland is currently engaged with one of our customers to build out this idea of an agentic hospital. And what we're learning in this process, because we're analyzing dozens of workflows to try to see what we can find administrative gains within all of the organization. I mean, eventually clinical will happen, but administrative is just a little easier to start with from a regulatory perspective. And what we've spent a lot of our time doing is focused on the outcomes that we're trying to achieve first. So it's not only when we do our discoveries, we are taking into account, especially when we get into prioritization, data availability, interoperability. Can we get to the data through some sort of an API? Can we get through a standards-based interface? Is the data in the right position for us to be able to utilize it to solve a problem? We have to first, even backing it further, identify the problem that we're trying to solve. And then we're really spending a lot of time outlining the objectives of what we want to do and how we're going to track that long term to see if we're going to be successful. Because it's not just the initial project rollout that we've been very focused on, because there is a lot to stand up from an infrastructure perspective to even get even the most simple AI solutions into your organization. But we need to be able to show that we accomplished the task, especially against the cost that we have to incur to accomplish that task, because large language, trillions of dollars in data centers aren't free, right? So you have to pay for all this stuff. And then we have to be able to see if we're achieving the goal, and then long-term be able to see, are we still achieving after 6 months, 9 months, a year? So I liked your statement on, really thinking about outcomes first when you start to define the problem. We'll come back to the cloud topic a little bit later, but that was definitely one that I wanted to get out there, because I found it to be kind of a fascinating exercise on the way we're having to think about how we do discovery at a customer side to be able to achieve these AI initiatives that we want to deploy.
Yeah. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier around governance and making sure that you have a committee or some level of multifaceted, multi-matrix stakeholder agreement on what the goals are, set clear objectives and clear scope for projects. This aligns now that you can have that set up for not just the radiology department or just the cardiology department. We can roll this across the enterprise and make sure that you are working with your vendors in an enterprise approach, because again, it comes back to data. If we're going to bring data into a system, how are we going to be able to holistically use that? If it is a cloud and we're going to route data, what clouds, where are they going? How are we bringing this together? And what type of network compute are you talking about? Setting that scope is precedent to you having a successful rollout and being able to achieve your outcomes. But if you don't have a committee that's shared and a common goal where you're working together, then you just create friction not only internally, but also with your vendors, because this isn't like you're just going to one vendor and getting them to work on this. This is typically multiple vendors working together in the sandbox to try and create actual efficiency.
Yeah, totally. You need to speak as one voice as an enterprise, so that the vendor's not getting mixed signals across the department.
And ideally, we don't want to pit each other against each other, right? Like, we want to work on these initiatives with you. So if you have a initiative, how do we work together collectively and have that one shared goal? Because we can all win. It's just we have to win together, not as individuals.
Yeah, totally. So we already started like drawing out cloud components. So that's where we're going to go next. So, there's lots of people who still have on-prem situations, right? But we're all like, okay, we all need to move to cloud. But there's like some hesitation and some concern about cloud. Like, what are you going to do when the internet goes down? Like, because you've seen that can happen now. What if we do when we're like totally hacked? What do you do for performance, speed, cybersecurity, integration? What do you have to say to those concerns? And then after we talk through the concerns, talk about the benefits of cloud and how it can start helping to address this workforce issue and trying to address efficiency.
Yeah, I face this every day almost. And the concept of moving your IT infrastructure stack further away from the building that you operate in is intimidating for a lot of people. Your IT teams, our mechanics right now, they're keeping the system running, and now it's going to be farther away where they can't touch it. But the reality is that the amount of money that these hyperscalers are investing in their data centers, in their connectivity, in their security is greater than all of us together could invest in our own data centers, right? So it is the most performant. It is the most connective, redundant, awesome uptime. I mean, the cloud vendors have deployed their own private fiber into every city in the nation. So the concepts of internet outage and that PTSD of variable performance from your internet connectivity actually isn't in the equation, but people assume, oh, I'm in the cloud, I'm dependent on these things. So at Visage, we haven't done an on-prem deployment in 6 years, and our median customer size is about 1.5 million studies a year. So these are really large organizations doing massive workloads, and the cloud has been a measurable performance improvement and security posture improvement. You don't have to face patching cycles with on-prem. You don't have to worry about those nasty stats that say on-prem devices are 63% more likely to be behind on some security update or patching event. So take advantage of the money that these cloud vendors are putting into their data centers. It will make things better for you. It will make things less hands-on for your IT teams. So and just to pass it off, but the IT or the AI topic is just further empowered by all of these things. So don't look at the cloud as risk. Look at it as bolting on a supercharger. It's going to just accelerate everything for you.
Yeah, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit to make my point, but I would say if you don't move to the cloud, you're negligent at this point. I mean,
Tell me more.
you mentioned outages, and there's no way that you can support a system and an environment in a data center with the uptime guarantees and security posture that can compare with AWS or Google Cloud. There's just no way, unless you go hire 500 security experts, 500 storage experts, 500 networking domain experts. There's just no way. So like the pace of innovation and cloud adoption on table stake infrastructure stuff, not even advanced technology, is just so much better than anything you can do on-prem. But they reached the point where you shouldn't do that. And I'm going through a personal journey where I have a daisy chain of NASs in my basement where I keep my photos. I'm very, very protective with my photos. And I've recently just put everything in Google Photos. So I went through that journey on a personal level, but it's just so much fun.
Yeah, so as a product manager who has a vendor neutral archive in my portfolio, we're used to dealing with data at scale. So most of our customers range, just like Steve's, from 1 to 15 petabytes. I even just talked to a customer the other day that had replicated 9 petabytes of data into 2 different redundant storage systems. So they were basically housing 18. The thought 5 years ago of going to that customer and saying, you need to move 9 petabytes of data to the cloud, they would have laughed you out of the room, because not only are the physics behind that, quite daunting for most people, because it takes a certain amount of time to move 9 petabytes of data. The concerns around losing your network connection, not having access to the content when you need it, not being able to pull relevant priors, all that stuff becomes a major concern. What I've seen happen over the last 5 years that we've been leading a cloud initiative at Highland was the fact that the customers seem to have reconciled with that, most of those fears, and they have determined, the vendors and working with the customers have put in place architectural designs that are designed to mitigate that. So I agree with Imad. Really, at this point, most vendors should be looking at moving their imaging data to the cloud. There's proven methodologies. You're dealing with hyperscalers that manage and secure tens of thousands of environments on a daily basis. Whereas you may have only secured 1 or 2 data centers in your career, you probably did an excellent job with it, but the scale at which they can handle this type of work is far beyond what most individual organizations can do. And so we're seeing more and more people start to really take a long, hard look at it, and beyond the security, compliance, the scalability, the instant access to infrastructure. We're seeing just a lot of value in the fact that, especially people like academic medical centers getting access to all those cloud-based services for training AI models. I'm using AWS specific product here, the health imaging solution that was designed from the ground up to help data discovery, training of models, inclusion into data lakes. All that becomes possible once your data is in the cloud. And so all the benefits my co-panelists have presented are all valid. And I think there's a lot more advantages that people are starting to tap into now that they've gotten over this hurdle of, how do I do this? How is it even possible?
Yeah, I would agree. Most have overcome the mental struggle and hurdles, I guess, and the gymnastics that you've got to think through of do we or don't we? I think the answer is we do, but there are true concerns, 0-day, cybersecurity things. What are we going to do in certain business continuity situations? And, we can throw some of these things to the wind for certain organizations, but when you're dealing with Department of War and you're trying to, really actually think of, I need a single box, then this thing is completely siloed and nothing touches it. These are real concerns for certain organizations. It's talking to your vendor. Most of your concerns can be overcome pretty simply. I think a lot of concerns are also baked in older ideology or older technology, or they may be baked in one possible situation that you've encountered from another vendor or another situation. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback, but it might be my earbud. It's kind of a situation where work with your vendors and work with all of us. If you have concerns, we've probably encountered those concerns. We've probably overcome most every one of those concerns in one way or another. And just like a lot of things, there's more than one way to skin the cat. We can solve these problems for you in a different way for different organizations based upon your organizational complexity, based upon how you're integrated to real world data centers and things of that nature. So if it is a situation where you still are trying to make those mental gymnastics of how you do it, just talk to us. I mean, realistically, most every one of your concerns can be overcome in one way or another.
Nice.
Just to add to that, one thing that we face from public facilities that are going through a rigid RFP process is that there's a very regimented communication cycle and it's limited. And so to Kyle's point, your staff might not have the opportunity to have enough engagement. So one tip I would really recommend that you take to your organization is please structure the RFP process where we have more time to have these lunch and learns with our potential vendors. Because if you're not consuming their content enough and you're operating, like Kyle said, with a lot of PTSD concepts in mind, you're not going to get onto the new proper path that you really should be going towards. So that'd be something that we face as a challenge that I would recommend you kind of take internally and improve.
Got it. So I'm hearing there's no need to be afraid of cloud. You can do it responsibly and safely. Talk to your vendors and partner with them. And you all are interested in partnering with your potential customers.
But by talking to your vendors, don't send us 2,500 questions in an RFP. That would be a
Right.
starting point.
So like a sit down, like a
Be
chat
using
it out.
AI to answer that.
Oh, fair enough.
Well, yeah, and 6 of the questions are the same question, just written in different ways.
They're trying to trip you up. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this next question, we're going to start from the other side. All right. So this is SIIM. We are where everybody belongs. We have all the ologies represented. We have pathology, ophthalmology, cardiology, dermatology, visual light, radiology. All right. So, but in a space where all the institutions are resource strapped, most places have just a single IT team for the hospital. They're trying to figure out how to use those resources across all the departments, even though I think that's incredibly unfair because radiology is completely informatics and we should have a larger proportion of the IT team. But I'm biased. Anywho, but I love all you other ologies out there. I do. I do. I have love for you. But I think we need either our own IT team or a larger bit of IT team. Anywho, how do your organizations address supporting both radiology, imaging informatics, and enterprise informatics?
Yeah, back to the cloud discussion. I think there's a lot of managed services now that can be deployed in the cloud that kind of offshore some of the at least administrative functionality of managing the stack itself. Whether these have been outsourced in the past with inside an organization or self-managed, as you move to the cloud, there's what AWS and others can do in the cloud to manage this infrastructure is, I'm not going to say it's better than what you could do, but they're the experts. They're really good at managing cloud services, Kubernetes, and all of these types of cloud native technologies that really allow us to expand and create more robust performance systems for you. On the other side of the token, yes, let's talk about standards. Let's talk about LOINC and RADLEX and how we're going to utilize AI to actually standardize series labels so that when you are reading for 50 facilities and you're getting, all kinds of unique ways to label a study, we can hang those for you instantaneously, and it takes minutes out of your time to actually read a study. But that does take effort on both sides, right? So make sure that you're working with vendors that are working to support you in that effort, but doing it in a standard way. This does, no disrespect, but it does take consensus amongst radiologists, which is sometimes hard to get. But we do have to make sure that as we're moving towards greater efficiency, that means everything in and around the read, which does take some level of standardization in the protocols and in the reports themselves.
Yes. So I recently did an interview with one of our customer partners, Dr. Culver at Metro Health, and they're one of the, we've helped several customers, design and deploy an enterprise imaging strategy, but they seem to be the most advanced that we've seen in the sense that they literally have all of their imaging content managed in one place and available to all applications throughout their organization. It's a multi-year effort they've been on. This didn't happen in 6 months. And he had a quote on our interview I found fascinating, and I'm paraphrasing, so if he's here, I'm going to get this wrong. But he said, imaging is not a department, it's a longitudinal patient asset. And what he's basically saying was the reason they went down this journey was that they're using this data to make the patient experience much more rich. And they're seeing benefit from that, being able to show medical images to a patient during a consult, or being able to have images available via a patient portal so that they can, then extract those, take those to another physician, which is still not the best thing in the world to be carrying images from one place to another. But being able to show your family what procedure you're having done and why you're having it done, it's there's a lot of benefits that Metro Health is seeing from this effort. And what they did when they set off on this task, and I won't go through the whole story, but they did acknowledge that from the beginning that radiology is the driver of most imaging in a healthcare organization. Not only the financial driver for the organization itself, but houses the most imaging, has the longest history with imaging, and so he had a unique approach when he created the steering committee that was going to drive this enterprise imaging strategy development, and that was to co-chair it with radiology. But then all the other imaging departments had a seat at the table and were part of the steering committee once they went through the audits and identified who had images, what types of images they were, so on and so forth. And this approach seemed to be a really good one. It acknowledged that radiology is at the top of the hill, but did not produce an imaging strategy that was only designed for radiology. And so it ultimately then they got the benefit they wanted after a multi-year process. But I found that to be kind of a fascinating approach to going down this journey and acknowledging that all images have value now that AI is real, research is at the levels it is. You have to keep everything because it has value, but you cannot walk away from all the radiology that's done over the years.
And this morning at the keynote opening session, the gentleman from the Office of the National Coordinator was talking about how imaging is orthogonal to the patient record, and it should be. And it really thought of as departmental of radiology. That's how it started. But ONC is really working hard on figuring this out and making some changes. There's an RFP about how they should be thinking about imaging, and as it pertains to being part of the full longitudinal patient record. That will probably change a lot of things depending on how they put out a carrot or a stick for us to respond to. But it is being thought of at that highest level is my point, which is really interesting. Back to the original question about what is our organization doing. AdvaHealth is a cloud native from the ground up. We started about 7 years ago, and the entire platform was created as a serverless, 100% microservices. No legacy code base to migrate or anything like that. So we're kind of born in the cloud for the cloud, and it's kind of helping us be nimble and rethinking some of the things that we know and take for granted, like how do I manage my interfaces, how do I manage my gateways, how do I maintain an enterprise level solution from a web browser. And I think we're there. I read Alex Tobin's PAX 3.0 paper, and I was like, yeah, that's what we're doing. It was like right on. And it should, we vendors, we users, we the community should expect more from us in terms of, things should be easier. We spend too much time migrating data, or too much. If I want to experiment with something or POC, it takes 6 months, and it shouldn't be that hard. You think about your work outside of imaging, like if you're in Microsoft Word and there's a plugin for a map plugin, you insert a map, super easy. Why can't it be the same for AI or a different reporting algorithm or what have you? That's the future we're headed towards.
Yeah, I think opening up enterprise imaging has a lot of significant benefits, like you just said, that the data is orthogonal. But it also, everyone needs to recognize it's a major risk point, because what you're doing is you're bringing in a lot of other folks who have their own forms of bad experiences and PTSD, right? And if you plot revenue by department, right? Cardiology is massive, radiology is massive. If you look this in a bar graph, it drops off significantly in other ologies when you look at their imaging contribution, right? And I think that from a C-suite level, they need to look at imaging from that lens as well, because it doesn't necessarily make sense to have equal voting members on a decision committee from a team that does almost no imaging and is, for lack of a better word, kind of riding coattails on the great informatics work that the radiology department is accelerating for the organization. So that is a distraction that I see occur with different partners of ours, and I'd encourage you to get ahead of that and manage into that, because ultimately for the patient and for AI, all the data needs to be in one system. That's the proper path. But from a decision-making perspective, too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, I think we all need to remember that radiology is the significant contributor. I mean, materially. We have one prospect who's facing closing over a dozen of their rural hospitals for financial implications in the upcoming years. And actually increasing their spend in radiology software will increase downstream revenue. And that alone is going to allow them to subsidize and keep these other dozen plus hospitals open. So it's really a mind shift to say we're going to overinvest in radiology because of all the other benefits it's going to have downstream for the physicians, for the patients, for the communities and whatnot. And so the enterprise imaging topic is a really sensitive one, and it needs to be managed with care and with focus. I think you really have to focus. Too many of the IT groups, I mean, they're just as overworked as radiologists, right? And they're spinning so many plates. And what the mind shift that we're constantly, I think all of us are trying to push into our partners is when you move things to the cloud, when you implement standards and adopt these interoperability standards, things get easier. You don't need the mechanics, and you can go on the offensive now and say, how do we improve the workflow versus just keep the doors open and keep the engine running, you know?
Well, let me add a little comment, just to add a little perspective or a different lens on what you said. A lot of things we've been talking about is kind of hospital-based thinking, but radiology and imaging is varied. We've got teleradiology and ambulatory and freestanding clinics, and they're all imaging-based solutions, and they all have the same pressures. The industry is under pressure everywhere. It's not just in the hospital. A lot of times we have to think of those solutions kind of from that perspective as well. It's a little bit harder and a little bit nuanced, but I just wanted to point that.
So what I'm hearing is like the concept of enterprise imaging is important. We need to get all the imaging into one location. So I'll try to harmonize the vendors across, or to collaborate and be interoperable across an enterprise. The problem is getting the resources to do that, and how to structure those resources, and honestly, how to convince the C-suite to do that and to understand that most of the times it's not radiologists up in the C-suite. Most of them it's not even doctors, let's be fair, right? They're business, they're MBAs, right? So how do we translate that knowledge? How do we translate this need? So that we can work forward across all fields, across all the ologies. Because working together to lift up radiology will actually lift up the entire enterprise, and make enterprise imaging more possible.
But I think the focus really on if you're backbone, if you're vendor neutral, or I'm not sure I love the term vendor neutral, but if your backbone of enterprise imaging architecture is standards-based, and you have good DICOM capabilities, and you're using IHE standards, and you have IOC, all of those things are super supported. We can still support multi-departmental workflows. We can still support giving the pathologist the tools they want. If your endoscopy lab still wants to use Epic Lumens, great. Just bring us the studies. We can still use all of that, create a longitudinal history for your clinicians downstream, as well as your patients, because the patient is a huge determining factor to the C-suite in making sure that, are we providing a environment, how are we competitive in our geographic metro area to make sure that patients are choosing us, and at creating the longitudinal patient record inside a portal for them to have access to whatever studies and reports is a huge decision-making factor. Having that infrastructure backbone and architecture that utilizes those standards and can normalize this in a way that creates a patient level viewer, a clinician level viewer, and a departmental level viewer, that's where you should be focused.
I love this. Just teeing it up for me. I'm about to go to standard space. All right. So yeah, coming from Rodlex and Loink, and IHE, radiology committee member, I'm interested in hearing like how your organizations are involved in the standards creation and standards implementation. How do you, let the community know which standards you are using, which IHE profiles you support, Are you engaged in updating the IHE profiles? If not, can we get a conversation as to why? And yeah, essentially, we're trying to work together. We're all trying to solve the same problem. The IHE profiles and standards exist for interoperability to work. So let's have a conversation about how we can all do that together and what you're already doing.
Sure, I'll start it. Most every standard that we have is online on our website. You can see all of the standards that we conform to. You can also see all of the cybersecurity, any certifications we have are pretty self-evident. And if you have a question, why don't you? We're more than welcome to answer those questions. We do sit on IHE steering committees. We work with IHE Connectathons. We're one of the first Firecast integrators. So I would also say these things move rather quickly, just like AI. So saying your X does not necessarily mean that like everybody's IHE X is they're not fully compliant. So work through that with your vendors. As far as Radlex and Loink, yeah, like let's make sure that organizationally we're kind of level set on what we're utilizing from Radlex to normalize study descriptors, to utilize that downstream with inside the PACS workflows on hanging protocols and et cetera. Those are the types of things where if you're working with your vendor on what standards they can use or what standards they may not have like fully certified but can adopt fairly quickly, because even that is doable. That's how we kind of create efficiencies for downstream users.
Yeah, conformance to IHE profiles is a key part of what we do at Highland and have done even before I joined the team. So this was a longstanding tradition, even before the parts of our portfolio were acquired and brought together, and it's really served us well over the years. In most years, we've gone to either 2 IHE Connectathons. This year, we went to the European Connectathon, and we find great value in being able to sit down with peer vendors and test what Kyle is talking about. Does this actually work? Can we actually connect and move data between our systems? This type of work is critical for us to make sure that we're building what's right. Now, I will also agree with you. The theoretical protocols sometimes don't work in the real world. They have to be refined. Other features and functions have to be added to them to make them work. But just being able to do that exchange of information in something like a Connectathon is critical. We publish all of our all the profiles we test, which is usually over 100 different profiles per Connectathon, on a IHE conformance statement, and it really just as it when you have this type of attitude as a vendor that I'm going to be as interoperable as possible. I'm not the one keeping the data and owning the data. I'm making it available to all the other systems within the organization to help drive whatever strategic initiative you want. That is the right place to start from, and I think it ultimately is very much in the theme of what we're trying to accomplish on this panel, talking about making data work for you, making it usable, extracting value from it, interoperability, and I'll even go one step further. Not just the IHE standard-based interoperable interfaces are critical, but having rich proprietary interfaces that can do more advanced tasks is also critical, and making those available for partner integrations will go a long way in helping you kind of move down the path of getting control of your data and starting to make use of it.
I'll be quick because we got the signal from Anna. So, which is also a signal for you to get your questions queued up.
He's doing my moderating.
Sorry.
Love it.
But what I was going to say is that yes, interoperability standards are table stakes, but the real life challenge that you brought up is where physician leaders are so key and partnering with vendors. Because to some extent, I build software, I sell software, you can use it however you want, right? It's not a holy war where I say you must use this CPT code, right? So this is where I love the relationship, and I love SIIM is a great place where this physician, technology interaction goes a long way.
I have to comment about it. I totally agree with what you guys have said, and what everyone needs to really understand is that probably a good number of the vendors that you'll be considering, they already support all these standards. Visage does the same thing as like what Kyle was saying. We go to the different connectathons and we manage all the profiles and make sure that we're meeting the newest standards and whatnot. But the problem is actually adoption by the customer, adoption by folks such as y'all in your organizations. So, we've supported Firecast for many years in high volume environments, but we have very few customers that are actually ready to go and deploy that technology. My observation is that it's been because they're spinning other plates, keeping the doors open with other problems. And that's why I've focused my career at this point into cloud, because although I've been in healthcare for 20 years, cloud is the current enabler for adoption and deployment of the standards that already exist, that we're all staying ahead of the game on, making sure they're there. We need demand from you all, and that means you need bandwidth to be able to focus on how you could make a better experience for the physicians or the patients, right? And that's where we need y'all to spend a little bit more time and focus, because the interoperability is sitting there on the shelf ready for you. We just need you to push those workflows forward.
All right, so we have a question. Oh, mic's not on.
I can talk really loud if I need to.
It's on.
Okay. So thinking about interoperability and standards, right? Like we have a vendor neutral archive. Awesome. It can take non-DICOM studies, right? Or data, images, take a PDF, import it. Great. Is it enough to say, hey, we can ingest non-DICOM data now and store it in the VNA? Or should we really be looking at those workflows, and instead of saying, yeah, great, it's in the VNA now, should we be going back to the vendors and saying, you really need to be DICOM or some other, standard format, rather than just, hey, I ingested it and it's in my universal viewer? Cool.
I'd say why? What's your goal? Like, got to define the goal before you can get to the right answer. And rarely do we face. I'm used to seeing this kind of discussion, and I think it's what outcome are you chasing with the priority, and then that kind of dictates the conversation from there on out. It's not about focusing on if we can do it, therefore let's do it. It needs to be, take it on a little faith that it's probably possible in one way or another. Why? What's your goal that you're trying to target? Because if you don't get that and you don't clearly target that, your physician base, your champions, your C-suite, all those people aren't going to be able to align, and then it's going to have struggle to adopt throughout the facility.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it from like the national standards, right? You talk about going to the IHE connectathons. So if that is my goal, let's assume that for a minute, am I doing enough, or am I off the mark?
So Steve said is correct. There are at least two solutions to this problem, probably more like five. You can DICOMize every single study you put in there, but that limits some of the portability at that point of those images. Let's say it's a derm photo or something like that. Yes, that would work in a DICOM viewer, but it may not, you can't email it to somebody at that point, right? You're going to have to unwrap it. Things like XDS, which IHE profile exists, then which is a good solution, but then you can get into, it's not heavily adopted in the U.S. You would need to make sure that let's say your viewer was an XDS consumer. You're a little bit back to what's the problem you had with DICOM, and so I think Steve's approach is probably the right way to go. There's ways to solve this, and you should be keeping all those images together with your DICOM images. I would still probably prefer to always keep them in native formats, just because of the portability, and you want to take advantage of the features and capabilities that those imaging formats had at their creation. But you do have to think about what your outcome is, because you've got a lot of planning to do to make sure all the systems you're going to surface that content to have the same interoperable capabilities as the VNA that you're currently using.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the biggest thing is, how do you want to normalize the data in a way that is able to be used by downstream consumers? That's, at the end of the day, I think where heart is we could DICOM wrap everything if we want to, then you would be able to have very structured data to be able to understand what it is, where it should go, and the different elements. If you've got multiple images inside a series or study, we can know which information about those and use DDF to filter out certain studies. So we can use DDF to kind of DICOM filter and only send part of what's in that that study wrapped.
Any more questions from the audience? No. All right, well, I want to dig just for a second into, okay, you said, all right, IHE profiles, you support them, awesome, but real world application can be sometimes different. Tell me more about that. How do you feed that back to the IHE profile team? Like, how do you submit feedback, where it's failing, where you see that there's issues? How can we improve the profile? Like, how are you engaged in that process?
There's a lot of that in the Connectathon feedback, right? So there is a lot of that. And sometimes we can have standardization as a vendor, but that doesn't mean of the 400 vendors that you're looking at, that they all utilize it in the same exact way. And this is where, like, while we'll say, hey, it works great, and sometimes it works great in a vacuum, but it doesn't work well in your environment with all of the things you have going on with inside the structure of your healthcare system.
Got it. It's a system level issue.
Yeah, it's the things you run into when you write software. The exchanging the data is what we do at the Connectathon, right? We test that to make sure, hey, I received this packet, you sent the packet using this protocol. All that has to happen. Where the complexities come in is when you start, and we take production software to the Connectathons and test them. But when you go to deploy the profiles, you run into things like, authentication, authorization, roles, tokens. How do you manage all that information? You end up having to build out the rest of the product around the profile, right? And that's the stuff that gets added. The profiles are fine for the most part. It's the building out the rest of what has to go into normal software development that you run into when you go into production sometimes.
Got it.
That's just normal growing pains.
All right.
I would say usually adoption is faster than standards, which is faster than regulation. So as you follow the problem to solve, you can go down this way and back to that.
Got it. Well, I think we are at time. Thank you all so much for an incredible panel. I really appreciate all of your time and your expertise. And thank you all for coming today, both in person and online.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.